Alright, welcome back to the continuation and conclusion of this Module 4 project, that employee retreat. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and work with tables. So we've got on the bottom of this second page, the first page of text, but the first page after the cover page, we've got this table at the bottom of that page. So let's go ahead and modify this a little bit. So we're going to bring our insertion point into the table somewhere to get our table tools. Now if we want to make these fit a little bit better, we can click and hold one of these margins, kind of drag it in to make it fit better. We can also, if we're doing that, we can click on that border like we do in Excel. If I double click, it'll automatically fit the text. That way I can adjust those, adjust the spacing of those. And then this last one, I'm going to do that same thing. Double click. Or I can just slide it out so it's at about 4 inches, about the 4-inch mark. Alright, so that's auto-fitting, but if I do need to fit a specific size, I can do that as well. So I can go to bring my insertion point in this first column. And if I go up to my Layout tab, you can see right over here we've got cell size group. And if I want to make these, expand them a little bit more, I can just change them as I want. So let's say I wanted this to be 1.6 instead. Just click that up arrow one time to change it to 1.6. And in the second column, right now it's at 1.53. If I want to kind of wrap this text into one, I can manually change it as well. So I can, this one I want just under 1 inch, so I'm going to type 0.98 and then enter. And then this one is now at about 3.5. But I want this one at 1.06. So I can just type in that 1.06. And that one is good. Alright, so now if I need to change a row height, I can change my row heights as well. So I'm going to select these that list below the heading row, and then in that cell size box again, I'm going to change this to 0.3 high. To just give it a little more room. Alright, and now let's go ahead and apply a style to that. So in our Design tab, we're going to go ahead and choose a style. So there, make sure we've got our insertion point on here. We're going to choose our table styles. And here we're going to want to change the grid table 5. So here's our grid table. So grid table 5 dark, accent 1. It's that blue looking one. Alright. And then, so now we've got this formatted right over here. We can modify this as well. So we don't like this blue stuff hanging out over here. So we want to deselect the first column option to get rid of our first column formatting. Alright. But then we decide, you know what? I do want that like that. And click on it again. Because we decide, hey, you know what? We do want that first column formatted a little bit differently. Alright. So now we can go ahead and we're going to align our data in our cells. So we're going to select the cells that we want aligned. So in this case, it's these two columns, the maximum capacity and then the daily rates. Since those are numbers, they're dollar values, we want them to align on the right. So let's go ahead and go to our layout and then choose that align center right option. And then these ones, sorry, we want to align center left. Alright. So now we're going to center our table. So we're not necessarily going to center the text, but we're going to center the table. So to do that, we have to deselect that text and select the whole table. Alright. And here, you can go ahead and either go to your Home tab and center, or Control E will do the same thing. Alright. And now we want to sort this, so we can take a look at these. There's a couple different ways we could do it. We can sort it alphabetically by what building we're going to be in. We could sort it by maximum capacity, either from most to least or from least to greatest, or we can sort it by how much stuff is going to cost for a daily rate. So in this case, we decide we want to sort them alphabetically. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to select with that table. So we've got the table still selected. And then in our Table Tools Layout tab, we can click on that Sort option. Make sure we say our table has a header row, and we're going to want to sort by building, text ascending, and then OK. Alright, so we got that. Now we decide we need to add a row to our table. And so we're going to, again, the nice thing about this is we could click on one of these rows and then insert below or above, or if you hover over the table on this left margin, you've got that little plus sign and you can just do a quick add where you want to. So in this case, we want to add a row below the last row. So where it says Wilderness, Wild and Commons. So let's go ahead and click on that insert row below. And then we're going to, in this farthest one, we're going to type total space hyphen space entire site. So if we want to rent that entire site, I guess, all right. And then looks like it wants us to delete a row too. Oh, I think it just is telling us that we can delete a row. We're not going to delete a row. The directions are talking about deleting rows. All right, but now we're going to add a formula. So the nice thing, we with these tables in Word, they kind of operate a little bit like Excel, but we can't do all the create all the formulas that we can in Excel. We can basically do some addition, adding some cell values, and that's about it. So we're going to click on the insertion point down here in this bottom of the second column, and then we're going to click on our Formula tab. And then you can see it recognizes that there's values above us, so it kind of just brings in this sum above. And that's kind of what we want to do. So we can go ahead and say OK. And then it totals up all the values in that. And then do the same thing. We're going to click in the daily rates one. And this one, we can click on it, formulas option again. And then here we're going to change that number format. So it's got the number format because these are dollar values. So we want to make sure we've got the dollar option selected. And then we're going to delete the 0.00 from both of those because we don't want the 0.00 to appear. All right, so we're just going to delete that 0.00 from the positive and the negative option, and then we're going to go ahead and say OK. And you can see it brings in the values without the decimals to match that formatting. All right, and now let's go ahead and change our cell spacing because we want the white space between every cell. So we're going to make our insertion point somewhere on the table. We don't have to have the whole table selected, but we just have to select the table. And then we're going to go ahead and click on the cell margins option. So that's in our alignment group. And then we want to change, so allow spacing between cells, and change that to 0.02. And then, so now you can see, I'm going to move this over a little bit. So you can see right now we've got this kind of dotted line between the rows and columns. I'm going to expand that a little bit and say OK. Now you can see we've got this white space between all of our cells. All right. So now let's go ahead and change our margins in our table cells. So again, inserting anywhere, go up to our cell margins, and then now we want to change that cell margin. So the top, bottom, left, and right value, and I'll bring this over here again. We're going to change our top value to 0.02. And the bottom value to 0.02. And then our left and right, I'm going to change that to 0.1. Not 0.01, 0.1. Alright, so all of these we're clicking up one time. Or sorry, two times. So this was 0, this was 0, we're changing it to 0.02. And these ones were 0.08, clicking up twice, changing it to 0.1. Go ahead and say OK. And then now you see it changes that, expands that spacing a little bit. All right. And now we want to go to that, select our column formatting. And so we are going to, and this is still in our layout tab, we're going to click on the distribute columns button. So that's going to be our table tools layout tab in the cell size. So we've got our distribute columns, distribute rows. We're going to go ahead and say, again, let's make sure we select our whole thing, and then distribute columns. And that's going to make the column widths uniform. All right. Oh, sorry. We're just going to do the second and third rows. I'm like, that looks really weird. We're just going to do the second and third rows and then distribute columns. Okay. That's a little bit better. Okay. All right. So let's deselect that column. We're done working with that column. Now we want to get rid of we've got this blank paragraph kind of floating around out here. We want to get rid of that one. So it's below that buildings table. So let's just go ahead and bring our insertion point down there and delete it. And then that deletes that blank paragraph option and then brings our page break up. So it kind of serves that dual purpose of getting rid of a whole blank page in our document. Alright, so now let's go to that next column, or that next table we have. And that's the one on table 3, or page 3. And we're going to bring our insertion point to anywhere in this table to select the table. And let's go to our Table Tools Layout tab. Alright. So now if our grid lines are not displayed, mine are displayed, but if they're not displayed, make sure we have them displayed so we can see what we're doing here. And again, if this was not, you'd have these big, it'd be a big white space. Just make sure you've got the view grid lines selected. Alright, so now we've got this first row. We're kind of missing one of these headings, so I'm just going to bring my insertion point in here, and I'm going to say I want to split this cell because this cell's been merged. I want to go ahead and split cell, make it 2 columns by 1 row. And then if I wanted to make it a specific size, I'll undo that. If I split cells, I can say change that. All right, but then this time I want to make sure that this stays together. So I'm just going to bring that little column width and align it with this one so that if I hover over it, it's going to be together. All right. Okay. Alright, so now let's go ahead and start modifying this table a little bit. So I'm going to position the insertion point on the cell boundary, so right over here, get the 2-way pointing arrow, and I can either double click it or I can just drag it over manually. And in this case, I think I want to bring it to yeah, we're keeping it where it was. Alright, sorry. Now we're going to add our column headings. So I'm going to bring my insertion point to that top of that first column. Fee-based options is the text I'm typing. And then that second column, fee per person. Alright, fee per person. Actually, it's going to be fee per, and then enter for per person. And then right align that. Alright, whatever they want. Alright, so I'm going to select the all rows. Oh, sorry, we're going to select all rows below. And then we're going to distribute the rows. So in our, right here, our cell size group, we're going to distribute the rows. Alright, and then we're going to insert a column in front of the first column. So I'm just going to highlight this first column and then insert column to the left. Alright. Okay. Alright. So we've got that selected, and now we want to merge these first 2 columns in the heading together. So merge those cells. And then I'm going to center that on the left alignment. And then now I want to do some cell merging. So I'm going to select these meal options. So the first 6 rows in the first column, and I'm going to merge those. Just like that. And then I'm going to do the same thing with these activities. And then merge cells. Alright, so here I'm going to type the text dining fees. And then here we're going to do activity fees. Alright. But I'm going to select these cells because I want to realign the text. I'm going to click on that text direction option. I'm going to click it again. So now we click it twice and it's going to rotate that text. Now I'm going to go ahead and click on this Align Center. Alright. And then from here, I'm going to resize that. So I'm going to, with my insertion point in this table, I'm going to click on this Auto Fit option. And I'm going to choose the Auto Fit Contents. Now the Auto Fit Contents is going to automatically fit the contents. It's going to make the table automatically fit the contents. If we did Auto Fit Window, it's going to make the table fill from margin to margin. And so unless you want your table to fill the whole page, this Auto Fit Contents is a great option. Alright, so I've just auto fit it. Now the next step wants us to change a column width, and really I don't understand why it wants us to do some of these things. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to change the column width for that minimum attendees. Okay, so we're going to select that, and then in our size option, we're going to type 0.95 in the width box. Let me redo that because I want this cell. 0.95. Okay, all right. So change the width of that table a little bit. Now we're going to insert a row and we're going to merge some cells. So we're going to insert a row at the top of the table. So I'm going to bring my insertion point up at the top. And then say insert above. Alright, and then I'm going to merge that row that I just added. And I'm going to choose this Align Center option because I'm going to give this heading, this table a heading. So I'm just going to type in dining and team building activity fees. So dining and team building activity fees. Alright, make sure I've got the text selected. I'm going to bold it, so I'm just going to use my Control B. Alright, and now we're going to give this table a style without using our table style options. So we're just going to use some shading for this one. So let's go to our Table Tools Design tab. And then we're going to start shading. So I'm going to select this top row, and I'm going to give it a shading of orange accent 2 lighter 50%. So orange accent 2 was a lighter 60%. Yes, sorry, lighter 60%. And then I'm also going to do the same thing with this dining fees. So those two options. And again, I'm just selecting the text and clicking the shade button because we just used it. So it's still going to be applicable. Alright. Now let's go ahead and change some row heights and hiding grid lines. So we're going to bring our insertion point into the row containing the title. Excuse me. And then in our layout tab, we're going to change that row height to 0.34. So from 20.25 to 0.34. And then enter. And then we're going to hide our grid lines. So deselect that View Grid Lines option, which looks really weird to me. Alright, so bring our insertion point in that table somewhere. And now let's go to our Table Tools Design tab again. Now we're going to add some borders to this. So we're going to click on our Borders and Shading option. We're going to select the option All. So Borders and Shading. Alright, we're going to click All in the Settings area of that Borders and Shading. So All, right over here. And then we're going to do the double line. So it's about the 7th one down or something. And then we're going to choose the color Blue Accent 1. Blue Accent 1. And then we're going to say OK to add that funky bordering around it. Alright, now our final step we're going to do, we're going to add a watermark onto this, and then we'll be done. So let's go ahead and change our view to multiple pages. Alright, and then I'm going to go to my Design tab, not my Table Tools Design, but my Design tab. And then in my page background watermark, I want a custom watermark, and I want to choose text option. So in that text where it says ASAP, I'm going to change that to all caps team. And then I'm going to leave it at Calibri. I want the horizontal instead of the diagonal option. Alright, and then I'm going to say apply. But make sure you get that semi-transparent selected, so apply. And you can see, I'm going to close it, and then I've got that team right across that. Alright, so I'm going to go back to my Control Home. I'm going to change it back to 100%, and then I'm going to do a spell check just to make sure there's no errors. Mine says it's good. Alright, so go ahead and save it, and that project is complete.